Today we are in we're continuing in the chapter, The Law of Attraction, which is chapter 18. And we're going to start on page 296, Attraction of Personality. Ernest Holmes wrote, "Every business, every place, every person, everything has a certain mental atmosphere of its own. This atmosphere decides what is to be drawn to it. For instance, you never saw a successful man who went around with an atmosphere of failure. Successful people think about success. A successful woman is filled with that subtle something which permeates everything she does, with an atmosphere of confidence and strength. The person who says of themselves, 'I have no personality with which to attract people,' has been laboring under a delusion. They need to be disillusioned. They must be shown that there is but one person. This person is manifested through every living soul. It is the personality. It is complete." Now, in that first paragraph in this section, Ernest Holmes builds on what he wrote at the beginning of the chapter about thought atmosphere. And if we are thinking, we are creating an atmosphere that is like planting a seed. It's determining the big picture of which our life develops within. And so as we begin to dive into the attraction of personality in this first paragraph, he again emphasizes the mental atmosphere. A mental atmosphere of success breeds success. A mental attitude or atmosphere of, "I have no personality which will attract people or friends or what I want," that's exactly what it's going to create. So we are really responsible for monitoring and then choosing the mental atmosphere that we operate within. The law of attraction, so many times when we talk about it or when people think about it, they think about, "I want to attract this specific material possession, and all I need to do is think about that." But what you are doing when you get to the specifics is you are dropping those specifics into a bigger pool, your overall mental atmosphere. And that is what we are talking about and thinking about in the first half of this entire chapter. So in the next paragraph, Ernest Holmes continues on page 296 in the section of Attraction of Personality. He continues this way: "The ones to whom we are most strongly attracted are not necessarily the ones who are the most beautiful physically, but are the ones from whom we receive that subtle emanation, that something." What is that something? It is that which emanates from within. It is the inner recognition of reality. Now we know, and knowing means using the law in a constructive way. Now we know I and my Father are one. I and Spirit are one. It is that which emanates from within. I and my Father are one. This is the strength for the weak, and life for all who believe. This is the strength for the weak, This is the life for all who believe. We can so fill ourselves with the drawing power of attraction that it will become irresistible. Nothing can hinder the man who knows that he is dealing with the one power that creates all from itself, moves all within itself, and yet holds everything in its place. One with the infinite mind. One with the personality of God. We should let this ring through our mind each day, many times each day, until we shall never again say, I have no personality. We have all personality. Did you get that? I will never again say, I have no personality. We have all personality. Not we all have personality, but we each have all personality. The personality of spirit, the infinite personality living in us, as us, and through us. So there are several things in this section on attraction of personality. Ernest Holmes starts with this idea of mental atmosphere and how we choose our mental atmosphere, and that is a presence within which everything else is created or develops or evolves. And that this mental atmosphere from there, when we remember that what we are representations of the personality of the infinite spirit, and that's who we are, then we will no longer be able to give ourselves the negative self-talk of I have no personality, or I can't do this, or I am not able to attract the kinds of people I want, or the relationships I want, or the money that I want, or the career that I want. Because when you believe without doubt, and when you believe with conviction, Ernest Holmes reminds us that I and my Father are one. Spirit and I are one. I am not separate from Spirit. Quoting again, this is strength for the weak. This is life for all who believe. We can so fill ourselves with the drawing power of attraction that it becomes irresistible. That is how the law of attraction works. There's not magic to it. It is spiritual principle. When I believe and understand, I attract that which I believe. I create that which I truly believe. And so the attraction of personality in some ways is not attracting anything that's outside of you. It is creating a vibrational match between your inner beliefs and your outer experiences. The people you attract will mirror, complement, and or mirror that which you believe about your own personality. So I am curious if that resonates with you. If you have examples in your own life where maybe you had a shift in your beliefs about who you are or how your life can be, and then as you realized you really believed it, you noticed that you were behaving differently, the personality you had shifted, but even more that you attracted other personalities that were in alignment. And so if you have an example of that, or maybe you have a question about it, maybe it doesn't resonate with you, then I'd love to hear from that. So Ryan, why don't you give people instructions about how they can participate?
Thank you, Dr. Tracy Brown. I just have to say it. So many people that are in the comments right now are saying that too, by the way. So lots of love and appreciation towards you, Tracy Brown. You are a magnificent light, and we love you. And good morning to everybody who is watching us and participating. And yes, this is an interactive discussion, so we really would love to hear from you. And there's a couple ways to do that. If you're joining us here in the Zoom room, you can go ahead and hit the raise your hand icon and I can call you into the room. Or feel free to put your experiences, comments, questions, so on inside of the comments and I'll read those aloud. And the same goes for those who are watching us on Facebook. Put your comments inside of the chat and I'll go ahead and read those aloud. And if you want to hop over into the Zoom room, I have put the link in the description above so you can join us. As always, I do keep it anonymous, so that way this is a safe container for you to share your experiences. So it looks like we have a few people with their hand raised. So the first person that I'm going to call into the room is going to be Anita. Anita, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Thanks, Ryan. Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning, Anita.
So talking about, things that you want to attract, right? And most of my life, I've been a loner and kind of, I guess, maybe rather reserved. Let's say it that way. And so one of the things that I've been working on and wanting to do is be more outgoing, right? So what have I been doing? But I noticed that I have been attracting into my life more and more people who are very outgoing. So that gives me a mental equivalent then, right, of how to be and how to show up in order to be more outgoing. So that's just something that, going with the topic for you there this morning.
I love that. Thank you, Anita, because I think sometimes we forget that the people who come into our lives, yes, they're a reflection of either who we are right now or who we are becoming. And in the previous chapter, a few weeks ago, Dr. Petra talked specifically about mental equivalents and what they are and how they are mental, but we also attach them to people or things in the physical so that they become more real to us. So that is a perfect example of how the attraction of personality and the law of attraction is working. I love that. Thank you. What else we got, Ryan?
All right, so I'd like to go ahead and call in Shauna. Shauna, do you want to go and unmute yourself?
Good morning, Dr. Brown and Mr. Ryan Brown. Two Browns this morning. So I won't go into a lot of the backstory, but just suffice it to say that I for a long time, I wanted to write a book, and I was just terrified of it. I won't even go into what stories I made up about being terrified about putting my voice in print. But in the process, 18 months ago, I attracted not only a dear friend back into my life who had written 4 books, but she brought a publisher to me. And so tomorrow I send my first draft to the publisher. And it's been such a funny journey because I started writing a year ago, June, and now I look back and I just wonder why I was so terrified. I was absolutely so terrified and felt so sure that I had nothing to write about. And in the process, I've seen this evolution where in the process now I have brought 4 more people to the same publisher. And the irony is that they've actually finished their books ahead of me. but they're so grateful, and the publisher is so grateful. And now I'm still evolving, because as I send my first draft to the editor, I realize I have to embody being an author now. I have to speak of myself as being an author. I have to be comfortable, telling people that I'm an author, like I am doing now. But it's a completely different mental atmosphere than I've spent in my life for 20 years. And it's sort of like, I remember going from 49 to 50, being terrified about being turning 50, and then I got to 50 and I was like, oh crap, what was that about? So anyway, that's my story.
Oh, Shauna. Shauna, the newest author from the CSLDallas community. Congratulations. And you're right, it's a perfect example of a shift in the mental atmosphere allows you to attract that which is in alignment with who you are now and who you are becoming. And Shauna, that is such a great reminder that sometimes when we're becoming the person we are evolving into, it can feel scary. But then once we're there, it's like, well, that was irrational. Well, it wasn't irrational at the time. The brain was doing what the brain does. It's trying to protect you. It's trying to keep you safe. And your soul is saying, but there's a vision. There's a vision, Shauna, to be an author. And when you changed your mental atmosphere, you began to attract the publisher, the people, and share that. That's another reason that's another way we can tell that other people see us differently, and or we get the opportunity to share that which we are learning as we become with other people who are on the same vibrational wavelength. So in this section, when Ernest Holmes writes about bringing people into your presence, there is no better example than the one that Shauna just shared. It feels like coincidence. It feels like magic, but it's not. It's a reflection of the law of attraction truly at work. Do we have anyone else before we move forward?
Yes, well, just to add into that, Tracy, so one of the things that came across, and I'll just kind of paraphrase this into a question here for you, is this how we create our own mental equivalents? Because think about it in the context of our conversation here. You don't know what you don't know. You can only vision, right? So when you start to do this process of manifestation, you're then creating a mental equivalent. Is that correct, or how would you phrase that?
Yes and yes. So when we have a vision or we have a feeling of a direction in which we want to go, part of believing in it and believing it can happen does require us to create a mental equivalent. And I'm hesitating just a little bit. Thomas Troward talks about creating a spiritual prototype. What are the attributes or qualities of God that we want to experience? What is it that we want to express on the invisible, on the spiritual level? And that's really important, and that's really the foundation that is even beneath or holding up mental equivalence. So mental equivalents get a little tricky because sometimes people think, oh, I want to be really good using video and technology, and so my mental equivalent is Richard Williamson, because I see him doing it every week, and he's so comfortable, and he just, quietly makes the magic happen. And then I see the videos from CSLDallas, and they're like 5 camera shots, and I'm like, how did that happen? Right? And so sometimes I will then say, I'm going to hold a mental equivalent of having the same skills that Richard has. I'm going to watch him. I'm going to follow him. I'm going to ask him to mentor me. But we have to understand that when we put a physical presence on our mental thoughts and dreams and goals and choices, we're not trying to become that person. Right? They are just a representation of the mental atmosphere that we're creating, and it helps us build a stronger, deeper belief system in ourselves. When we look at a couple that's been married 35 years and we say we want them as our mental equivalent, we're not saying, I want to be just like that couple. Exactly. You're saying, I want to create in my life the kind of experience and the kind of relationship they have that will allow them to stay together for 35 years and still look like they love each other. No, just kidding. Still behave as if they love each other, and they model that. So I want to add that in, because when we are using the law of attraction, and we attach it to some physical person or place, we're not trying to duplicate that person or place. We want to use them for the inspiration and for the reinforcement of the spiritual prototype. Ryan.
Yeah, and to add to that, Richard is my mental equivalent of a cameraman, too. I've seen this man do a somersault with a camera in his hand and still keep the shot still. It's unbelievable what he does. All right, so I want to allow Jeff into the room. Jeff, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Good morning, Dr. Tracy Brown.
Good morning. Good morning. What you got?
You look wonderful in your new doctor-ish. I'm sorry. I withdraw that last comment. I'm not sure. I'm glad that Brian brought up mental equivalent, because it seems like, to me, mental equivalent, I'm taking Carol's class, and we just finished mental equivalent, and it seems like mental equivalent and law of attraction are almost subsets of each other, as opposed to separate topics. Because what's meaningful to me in mental equivalence is that the range of our possibilities at the present time does not extend far beyond the range of our present concepts. As we bring ourselves to a greater vision, we induce a greater concept and thereby demonstrate more in our experience. In this way, there is a continuous growth and unfoldment taking place. So, in my life, I'm noticing the transformation in terms of my being and the world as I'm growing spiritually. It seems like everything is the same, but the world is taking on a different fragrance, and I'm seeing the same things differently. And so sometimes I think of when I start asking for a manifestation for specifics, like I want to make $200,000, or I want to sell $30,000 worth of stuff, or whatever. I wonder if that's putting a limit on something, as opposed to just saying, I'm willing to accept the abundance of whatever happens, and I'm enjoying the ride along the way. And to me, if I make $20,000 a month, or $10,000 a month, or $100,000 a month, does it really make that much difference? I I don't know if I'm asking the question the right way or anything, if it's making sense, but I'm wondering if asking something specific is more limiting as opposed to just being. I mean, I think of Meister Eckhart's quote of we should bother less about what we are to do and think more about what we are to be. For if our being is right, everything we do will shine forth brightly. So it's kind of like there's two different paths that lead to the same place, it seems to me.
There are 1,000 paths that lead to the same path and the same destination. All paths lead to God. So everything that you have said is true. Even when you have positioned some of what you said as if they are opposites or competing, yeah, that's true. It may have been just last week that Dr. Petra said something like, it's fascinating how almost all spiritual truths show up as part of a paradox. And it is true. So let me just take several elements of what you said, because you covered mental equivalence, you covered belief, you covered specificity versus generality in what we claim, and you talked about the law of attraction too. So let me see if I can weave some of that together, because you put forward some things that are really, really important, Jeff, not just for you individually, but for all of us as we try to live from this grounded place of spiritual principle. So the chapter before this chapter, we're in the chapter on law of attraction, but the chapter before was mental equivalence, and Ernest Holmes spent 10 pages really going through what's a mental equivalent, how do you use it, how do you make it work for you, because it is so tightly connected to what we attract. So they are absolutely connected and woven together. They're not competing and they're not separate things. And he spends a chunk of time helping us understand both of them, because we are using them both all the time, consciously or unconsciously. So if I have a mental equivalent that at the very core of me, I am a creative artist. I create art from unexpected sources. I make beautiful art, and it's just something that is coming from inside of me. I didn't go to school and think about it. And the art I create is actually a reflection of the deepest part of me. And it uses everything from my life. It uses my visualization. It uses my love of music and flow. It uses my engineering and technical background. And I'm making art from that. And I have a mental equivalent. But I don't believe it at first. It's like, yeah, that would be nice, but so my mental equivalent isn't very strong. It's an idea. It's a possibility. But the more I focus on that, the more I actually build a mental equivalent. And then I attract people. And next thing I know, maybe it's a couple years later, I find myself displaying and selling some of my art at an urban artist market. And it's like, oh, maybe this is something I could do. Oh, well, let me invest some more time in it. And my mental equivalent expands. It expands bigger and more strongly, I believe it, and I begin attracting other people who support me as an artist, who begin to see me as an artist, even though I don't fully see myself as an artist. And I have people encouraging me and people telling me about other places that I might be able to exhibit or sell my art. And maybe a year later, that mental equivalent of me as an artist combined with the law of attraction, I get an invitation, and I'm now exhibiting work at a local art gallery or a local venue. And now I'm really beginning to believe it. And then I am beginning then to attract even more. And now maybe it's a few years later, but I've built my mental equivalent and the law of attraction is working to match that. And I find myself being invited or being selected in a competitive process to exhibit at one of the major performing arts centers and art centers in my community. That's how it works. And that's why you're going to be exhibiting at the Eisenman Performing Arts Center, because the mental equivalent grew and the law of attraction filled in the blanks. The mental atmosphere became solid, and the universe could only say yes. There's no mystery, there's no magic, there is consistency and growth. So I love that. I love the question, but don't make it harder than it is. Don't think of it as you have to have this or this. It's all working together. Ryan. So we're going to go into this attraction of personality a little bit more, and Anita actually gave us this perfect segue to the next section, which is attracting friends. And when Anita gave us the example of, I am choosing to be more outgoing, I am choosing to be around people who are modeling that, or the universe is providing me people who are providing me an example. The universe provides me with the people I need. And how many of us have been at periods in our life where we are transitioning and the people who were our friends before may not match the people who had been our friends, or our family members, or the people we worked with for many, many years. So Ernest Holmes, beginning on 297, talks about attracting friends. In turning to the law, realize that it is a law of reflection. Now I'm just going to stop right there. We talk about the law of attraction, but often and really at some level we could say it's a law of reflection. So realize that it is a law of reflection. Quote, life is the mirror of king and slave, Emerson said. If you want a friend, be a friend, end quote. As the idea of friendship dawns upon the consciousness, the law of attraction produces friends, for one is the picture and the other is the thing. Now, I encourage you to, if you have the Science of Mind textbook, to read this section, because there are some real jewels here. The next paragraph begins, do we wish to attract friends? We must begin to image ideal relationships, be they social or otherwise, to sense and feel the presence of friends, to enjoy them in our mentalities, not as an illusion, but as a reality, not as a dream, but as an experience. Declare their presence here and now. And this is written in all caps. But we must never look to see if they are here, because this would imply doubt and would neutralize our word. Repeating, but we must never look to see if they are here, because this would imply doubt and would neutralize our word. We can attract the kinds of friends we wish if we specifically designate the kind. But we must never think of certain people, or that a particular individual must be one of those friends, for this would be hypnotic The idea will bring the right kind of friends. So this goes to the last part of what Jeff was asking about. Should I be specific or should I be general? And the answer is yes, you should be specific, and yes, you should be general. There are times for both. There is not one right answer. So if you are clear that you want certain types of relationships and certain types of friends, that might be general, and it can be really, really powerful because you can't tell by looking at the package if the person inside is going to match what you're looking for in friendship. And so that may be, you may be general in terms of I want friends who behave a certain way, who support me a certain way, who have these kinds of experiences. But it could be tricky if you say, I want John J. Smith to be my friend because I admire him, or I want to be friends with a specific celebrity because you see their persona, right, that their celebrity persona. And that would be specificity in a way that may or may not serve you, because you may get the specific and you may still not have the quality of friendships you want. But at the same time, there are times to be really specific. And that is because you need a certain thing in order to achieve, or you understand that there are certain material things or certain experiences that are related to what your mental atmosphere is creating. And then you need to be specific. Remember, a choice and a specificity is not terminal. It's not the end. So if I say I want to have a minimum of $40,000 in income in a certain amount of time, I'm not saying that's all the income I'm ever going to get for the rest of my life, right? I can then, as I approach 40,000, I could then say, this is great, this feels good. My mental atmosphere expands, and now I set a new goal, a new visual, a new mental equivalent of what my life will be like when I am bringing in $65,000. And as I get to $50,000 or $55,000, I then may select a new mental equivalent of I will double my income in the next 12 months. And I begin to see what my life would look like and what I would be doing and how I would be behaving and who the people would be in my life when I am bringing in $130,000. So specificity is not limiting, it is just setting the next step. And you always are a choice, and you can always change it. So I just want to finish out or round out this attracting friends in terms of summarizing what Ernest Holmes talks about, because this is a place where many of us really forget to use the law of attraction. And so attracting friends, the reminder is here. In order to have this friendship enduring, true, really worthwhile, and a thing of beauty, we should cultivate an attitude of friendship toward everybody and everything, because we don't know the package that it is coming into. So Ryan, do you have anything for us that's come up? We've got about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I do. And it relates so well into what we're talking about. Some of the folks were mentioning your net worth is your network, right? And you must be the person to have the network. And so I thought it's really great to hear that kind of relating over to what we're talking about here today. But the question that did come across, it talks about relationships. And first and foremost, they said, you look great, by the way. So I want to acknowledge that. And why is it almost everyone in my life I love and or like very much but they are the worst person for them. So why does that keep happening? Why do we attract that person into our life?
I love that. I don't love that it happens, but I love the opportunity to take a breath and think about what we experience, especially when it is a pattern and it occurs again and again, is the universe whispering to us what we actually believe. So if I am consistently attracting people who, in their behavior with me, is something that I don't want, there's a part of me that is often, this is not 100% of the time, but often it's a reflection, right? This is, the law of attraction is a law of reflection. So there are many things I could be believing unconsciously. I might be believing that there are really great people and I don't deserve them. Or I might be believing that I'm not good enough even though I can see the good in other people. There may be an unconscious belief or a hidden belief that things just don't work out for me. So I can believe I know a lot of great people and I will keep attracting great people. But if I also believe, not having anything to do with the people specifically, but if I also believe that, things never really work out for me, then sooner or later the relationships don't work out, even though I can see how great these people are. And so it's always an opportunity when we have a pattern to look at what consciousness is causing the pattern. Now, if it's a one-time thing, that's not a pattern, and that could be a fluke, or it could be the entryway into a new way of being. It could be the wake-up call to answer the inner call to go in a different direction. It could be a lot of things if it's a one-off experience. But what I heard in that question is, this happens. This has happened multiple times. So it's just an opportunity to say, what conflicting belief do I have that may be about relationships, or it may be about me, or it may be about something that seems completely unrelated that I heard from my parents or a teacher when I was 3rd grade or 7 years old, that is still working in me. And this happens to all of us. So you may think, licensed practitioners and spiritual coaches and ministers and, wow, they've got their lives all together. No, we experience all the same things that everybody else does. But when we begin to notice there's a pattern, we go to another practitioner or a minister and we start working it, and we start focusing on what we want instead of what we don't want. So my final comment about that is, don't get so absorbed in what's not working that you are spending more energy unpacking that than you are replacing what's happening with a new thought, a new mental equivalent, creating a new mental atmosphere that by its very nature uses and employs the law of attraction to bring you the change you want to see and be. That is all the time that we have for this morning's Science of Mind class. Again, my name is Tracy Brown, and we are going through the Science of Mind textbook by Ernest Holmes, page by page, chapter by chapter. So I will see you again next week, where we will continue in the chapter, The Law of Attraction, starting with attracting success. So if you, like me, want to have more success in your life, you will be with us. I wish you a fabulous week. Please join us in a few minutes for our Sunday celebration. Have a great week.